Imagine for a moment that the ultimate key to understanding the Christ was not lost in the shifting sands of time, but was deliberately buried, hidden from those who were never meant to find it. Consider that a single, enigmatic figure, a shadow that appears for only a breath in the official record, holds the code to a spiritual lineage so ancient and so potent that entire empires were built to erase its memory. This is not a story of what was forgotten, but of what was intentionally silenced. It is a revelation that waits not in dusty archives, but in the living memory of a tradition that refused to bow to the new orders of the world, a truth preserved in the high, misty mountains, far from the centers of dogmatic control. What would change inside you if you learned that the foundation of your spiritual understanding was built upon a missing cornerstone? Our journey begins on the sun-scorched plains of ancient Canaan, under a sky of brilliant, unforgiving blue. Here, the patriarch, Abraham, the father of nations, a man who spoke directly with God, encounters a figure of immense and unsettling authority. This is Melchizedek, the king of Salem, a priest of the Most High God. He appears without genealogy, without a past, as if he simply emerged from the sacred geometry of the land itself. He offers bread and wine, a ritual that would echo for millennia, and he blesses the great Abraham. And then, as quickly as he arrived, he vanishes from the main narrative, leaving an echo that has haunted the edges of Scripture ever since. The official story simply moves on, treating this profound event as a curious but minor prelude. But what if it was not a prelude? What if it was the entire symphony, and we have only been allowed to hear a single fading note? This is where the path splits. One road leads to Rome and the great councils that standardize Scripture, where inconvenient truths were trimmed away and mysteries were flattened into manageable doctrines. But we are taking the other path, a trail that winds upward into the cloud-wreathed highlands of Ethiopia, to the ancient kingdom of Aksum. Here, within the spiritual fortress of the Tewahedo Church, a different library of sacred knowledge was guarded. Insulated by geography and unwavering faith, the Ethiopian scribes preserved a canon that held the story of Melchizedek not as a footnote, but as a central pillar of cosmic truth. Within texts like the Kebra Nagast, this priest-king was not a fleeting ghost, but the very embodiment of an eternal order, a truth deemed too expansive, too liberating for the controlled narrative of Western religion. This is the point of rupture, where known history ends and the great revelation begins. This search is not for the merely curious, it is for the seeker, for the soul who has always felt that a vital piece of the story was missing. It is for those who look upon the grand structures of religion and feel an intuitive sense that a deeper, more direct truth must exist beyond the walls of any institution. This is a calling to your own ancestral memory, a whisper from a part of you that remembers a time before the veils were lowered, a time when the connection to the divine was not a gift bestowed by an intermediary, but an inherent birthright. This knowledge was not hidden from the world, it was hidden from the part of you that was taught to seek power outside of yourself. But that part is now awakening, and it is beginning to ask the questions that can undo centuries of forgetting. The truth of this eternal priesthood, this cosmic lineage represented by Melchizedek, promises not just to fill a gap in history, but to restore a missing dimension to your own spirit. It is the key to unlocking a more profound understanding of Christ's mission and ultimately of your own spiritual sovereignty. We are about to pull on a thread that, when followed to its end, could unravel the very fabric of what we have been told to believe. If you feel the resonance of this call, if the mystery of this forgotten king stirs something deep within you, then you have arrived here for a reason. Subscribe and join us on this sacred journey. Together, we will become the guardians of the wisdom that was always meant to be remembered. To understand the depth of this hidden knowledge, we must journey back to the moment the world split into two streams of memory. One stream flowed toward Rome, a current of logic, order, and empire. It carved its story into stone and law, building a structure of faith that could govern the known world. In this world, after the great councils of the 4th century, a new spiritual architecture was designed. An empire, newly converted, needed a unified narrative, a clear line of authority that could be traced, managed, and defended. The divine had to be organized, catalogued, and dispensed through a sanctioned hierarchy. It was a system built for control, born from a desire to bring a single, unwavering order to the chaos of competing beliefs. In this grand project of codification, every story, every prophet, every sacred text had to be measured and placed within a precise lineage. The goal was to create a fortress of doctrine, and within its walls there was no room for a truth that could not be contained. This is where the conflict begins, not on a battlefield with swords and shields, but in the quiet scriptoriums where the story of God was being edited for a new age. The architects of this new order encountered a problem, a ghost in the carefully constructed machine of their theology, Melchizedek. He was an anomaly they could not explain away, a priest of the Most High God who existed before the law of Moses, before the covenant with Abraham was even sealed. He had no recorded father, no mother, no genealogy. He was, in essence, a wild truth, a testament to a divine authority that did not need a building, a council, or a creed to exist. His power was inherent, direct, and unmediated. How could a system built on apostolic succession, on a chain of authority passed from one man to the next, account for a priest who seemed to answer only to the cosmos itself? The threat he posed was existential. If a figure like Melchizedek could hold such a high priesthood, it implied that the connection to the divine was not a gift to be bestowed by an institution, but a state of being accessible to those of a certain spiritual caliber, regardless of time or tradition. This was a dangerous idea, a seed of spiritual sovereignty that, if allowed to grow, would render the entire structure of religious control obsolete. So, a decision was made. A quiet, subtle act of spiritual containment was executed. Melchizedek could not be erased entirely. His encounter with Abraham was too deeply embedded in the sacred texts, but he could be demoted. His cosmic significance could be reduced to a mere symbol, a foreshadowing. He was reframed not as the embodiment of an eternal order, but as a simple type of Christ, a fleeting preview of the real authority to come. His son was diminished to a distant star, a curious but ultimately minor character in a story that now had a new, approved beginning and end. But while one stream of memory was being carefully channeled and dammed by Rome, the other flowed south, high into the mountains of Ethiopia, a land the Romans called a realm of myth. Here, in the kingdom of Axum, a spiritual fortress stood defiant against the theological tides. Protected by geography and an unwavering ancient faith, the Ethiopian Tewahedo Church became a sanctuary for the knowledge that was being systematically trimmed and discarded elsewhere. They were the guardians of a different library, one that held a more expansive view of the heavens and the earth. In the cool, silent air of monasteries hewn from volcanic rock, scribes painstakingly copied manuscripts in the ancient Ge'ez script, preserving a canon that the councils of the West had deemed apocryphal or inconvenient. They were not hiding this knowledge, they were simply keeping it alive, breathing as they had always done. Within this sacred vessel, the memory of Melchizedek was not faded or reduced. In texts like the Kebra Nagast, the Glory of Kings, and in the deep oral traditions that accompanied them, he was not a footnote. He was a vibrant, powerful presence, understood not as a human king who happened to be a priest, but as a timeless being, a manifestation of a cosmic law. His priesthood was not a temporary role but an eternal function, a force of balance and divine order that predated creation itself. The bread and wine he offered Abraham were not seen as a simple gesture of hospitality, but as a transmission of this ancient, life-giving wisdom. This was the ancestral memory that survived, intact and undiluted, a living truth that refused to be forgotten. Why was this version of the story so vital to preserve? What did these guardians know that the rest of the world was being taught to forget? The conflict, then, is not merely a historical disagreement between two ancient churches. It is a battle for the soul of a mystery. On one side, a system that sought to place the keys to heaven in the hands of a chosen few. On the other, a wisdom tradition that insisted the keys were never external to begin with, but were hidden within the sacred chamber of the human heart, waiting to be rediscovered. The subtle details of this divergence are the breadcrumbs that lead us back to the source. The system of control built its foundation on a story of a broken humanity in need of an external savior and an institution to mediate that salvation. But the knowledge preserved in the highlands whispered of a different reality, one of divine inheritance, of an unbroken lineage of light to which every soul belongs. This schism in history, this divergence of paths, is also a map of the human soul. There is a part of us that seeks the safety of defined structures, that craves the certainty of a handed-down truth. But there is another, older part, an ancestral echo, that remembers a wilder, more direct connection to the sacred. It is this part of you that is being called now, invited to look beyond the fortress walls of inherited belief. What if the key they hid wasn't just about a man named Melchizedek, but about the very nature of your own spirit? The trail of this lost truth does not lead to a dusty archive, but to a living memory, a revelation that has been waiting patiently for the moment of our collective awakening. And that moment is now drawing closer. The evidence of this suppressed truth is not found in a single locked vault, but is woven into the very fabric of a living tradition, like veins of gold running through a mountain of ancient stone. It has been preserved, not in spite of time, but because of it, protected by those who understood that some truths are too sacred to be entrusted to the fleeting empires of the world. The journey for this proof does not lead us to the curated archives of Rome or Constantinople, but to the high, thin air of the Ethiopian plateau, where the memory of the world feels different, clearer. Here, the ancestral knowledge survived, not as a relic, but as a vibrant, breathing current. It exists in the ink of protected manuscripts, in the resonant chants that echo in rock-hewn churches, and in the silent gaze of monks who are living libraries of an unbroken oral lineage. This is not a search for what was lost, but an encounter with what has been faithfully kept. First, we must turn to the written word, to the sacred texts that form the bedrock of the Ethiopian Tewahedo Canon. Chief among them is the Kebra Nagast, the Glory of Kings. In the West, this text is often dismissed as national epic or myth, but to its guardians, it is a spiritual chronicle, a map of the cosmic order. Within its hallowed pages, Melchizedek is not a fleeting character who serves bread and wine. He is revealed as a celestial being, a manifestation of the eternal word, sent to establish a sacred priesthood on earth, long before the law was given on Sinai. The Kebra Nagast describes his lineage not as earthly, but as divine, a priest not by human appointment, but by cosmic decree. This manuscript, copied by hand for centuries in the scriptoriums of Aksum and Gondar, is a direct challenge to the controlled narrative. It is a piece of tangible proof, a testament in ink and parchment, that a different, far more expansive story of divine authority was not only known, but cherished as a foundational truth. But not all knowledge is bound in leather and ink. Deeper still is the proof carried in the unbroken chain of oral tradition. In the quiet solitude of monasteries like Debre Damo, accessible only by a rope lowered from a sheer cliff face, wisdom has been passed from master to disciple for over 1,000 years. These are not just stories, but transmissions of consciousness. Here the elders speak of Melchizedek not as a historical figure, but as a principle, the cosmic law of spiritual balance, the perfect union of the kingly and the priestly, the material and the divine. They teach that his priesthood is the underlying current of all true spiritual paths, a river of truth that flows beneath the surface of every religion. This living memory, passed through breath and spirit from one generation to the next, is an archive that cannot be burned or edited. It is a form of evidence that resides in the human soul, a truth kept alive by the steady rhythm of devotion, far from the reach of councils and creeds. The proof is also etched into the very earth of Ethiopia itself. Look to the astonishing churches of Lalibela, a site so miraculous it is often called the New Jerusalem. These are not structures built upon the ground. They are monolithic temples carved down into the living volcanic rock, a testament to a faith that saw the divine not as something to be reached for in the sky, but as something to be excavated from within the heart of the world. This is the architectural signature of the Melchizedek consciousness. A system of control builds upward, creating towering hierarchies that separate humanity from God. But a tradition that remembers the eternal priesthood carves downward, into the foundation, into the source. Each of these 11 churches is a symbol of an unmediated connection, a holy place that is one with the planet itself, just as Melchizedek's authority was one with the inherent order of the cosmos. They are a silent, powerful sermon in stone. Further evidence emerges when we examine what was deliberately left out of the Western narrative. The proof of a cover-up is often found in the shape of the hole it leaves behind. The early Christian world was a vibrant ecosystem of diverse beliefs. Writings from Gnostic traditions and mystics like Clement of Alexandria hinted at deeper esoteric teachings, a secret gnosis reserved for the initiated. They spoke of a cosmic Christ and a spiritual reality far more complex than the simplified doctrines that would later become official. The systematic suppression of these texts during and after the Council of Nicaea was an act of intellectual and spiritual deforestation. Melchizedek, with his untraceable authority and universal priesthood, was a towering tree from this ancient forest of wisdom that had to be cut down to a manageable size, lest his shadow fall over the new, carefully planned garden of imperial religion. The silence surrounding his true nature in the West is not an absence of information. It is the sound of a door being intentionally closed. Yet, even within the walls of the official canon, a powerful echo of this lost truth remains. A crack in the edifice that could never be fully sealed. It is found in the New Testament, in the mysterious epistle to the Hebrews. The author of this letter, struggling to explain the supreme authority of Christ to a skeptical audience, reaches for the only precedent that will suffice, Melchizedek. He describes this enigmatic king as being without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, resembling the Son of God. He remains a priest forever. This is not the description of a mere Canaanite king. This is the language of the eternal, the cosmic, the divine. It is a moment where the ancient suppressed knowledge bursts through the seams of the controlled narrative. The author of Hebrews is admitting that to understand Christ, one must first understand Melchizedek. This passage is the ghost of the original teaching, a surviving fragment of the ancestral memory that confirms what the guardians in Ethiopia never forgot. It tells us that the key was never truly lost, only hidden in plain sight, waiting for those with the eyes to see. This knowledge was not merely erased from a book, it was carved out of the human soul. The schism that sent one stream of memory toward Rome and another into the high sanctuary of Ethiopia was not just a historical event. It was the moment a great spiritual wound was inflicted upon the collective consciousness of the world. It is a wound felt not in the body, but in the spirit, a subtle, persistent ache of incompletion. It is the feeling that there is a vast, silent chamber within the cathedral of our own hearts, a holy of holies that we have been told we are unworthy to enter. We have been taught to stand outside the gates, waiting for an intermediary, a key holder, to grant us access to a divinity that was, in truth, our original home. This is the legacy of the great forgetting, the quiet sorrow of a king who has forgotten he wears a crown. Does this feeling not resonate within you? Have you ever stood before the grand monuments of faith, listened to the prescribed words, and felt a profound sense of something missing, like hearing a beautiful song played on a single string when you know it was composed for an entire orchestra? This is not a failure of your faith. It is the stirring of your ancestral memory. It is the echo of Melchizedek's truth, vibrating through the centuries, whispering that the divine is not a distant throne to be approached with fear, but a living current that flows through your very blood and bone. What if this emptiness you sometimes feel is not an absence, but a presence waiting to be acknowledged? A hidden knowledge, a lost truth that has been sleeping within you, awaiting the right vibration to awaken. This ancient revelation about an eternal priesthood is not a story about the past. It is a mirror reflecting your deepest potential. It is a map that leads you back to the sovereign center of your own being. The system of control built its power on the idea of your inherent brokenness, your separation from the source. It offered itself as the bridge across a chasm that it had in fact helped to create. But the wisdom guarded in the highlands speaks of an unbroken lineage, a river of light that flows from the heart of creation directly into the heart of every soul. To remember Melchizedek is to remember that you are a part of this river. It is to begin the sacred process of dissolving the illusion of separation and reclaiming your divine inheritance. This is the great secret of your identity, the purpose that beats beneath the surface of your daily life. You are not meant to be a mere spectator in your own spiritual journey. Within you lies the same blueprint of divine balance that Melchizedek embodied, the perfect union of the priest and the king. The priest within you is the part that knows, that feels, that connects directly to the silent wisdom of the cosmos. It is your intuition, your inner oracle, the part of you that can hear the voice of the divine without need for an external translator. The king within you is the part that acts, that creates, that brings this sacred knowledge into the material world with authority and grace. It is your power to shape your reality, to rule the domain of your own life, not with force, but with enlightened consciousness. For centuries, we have been taught to outsource these roles. We were told to give our priestly connection to an institution and our kingly power to a worldly authority. We became a people divided against ourselves, a kingdom in exile from its own throne. The awakening that is happening now across the planet is the slow, powerful return of this inner integration. It is the remembering that you are your own priest, your own king. This is the truth that was so dangerous, the revelation so potent, that entire empires dedicated themselves to its suppression. Because a world of sovereign beings, each connected directly to the source and acting from a place of inner authority, cannot be controlled. The tension you feel is the friction between this emerging truth and the old structures that still seek to contain it. The system of control did not vanish with the fall of Rome. It simply changed its face. It became the voice of doubt in your mind, the fear of stepping outside the lines, the cultural conditioning that tells you to seek validation and power from external sources. It is the subtle, pervasive narrative that a mystery this profound is not for you to solve. But that narrative is now crumbling. We have followed the breadcrumbs of this hidden knowledge from the desert plains to the mountain monasteries. We have seen the evidence in preserved manuscripts and in the silent testimony of sacred stone. Now we stand at the precipice of the central revelation, the very heart of this ancient mystery. The pieces are in place. The echo of the forgotten truth is growing louder, becoming a clear and steady tone. We are about to cross a threshold, to look directly at the knowledge that was deemed too liberating for the world to know. The key, we have been told, lies in understanding Christ's true identity. What if the most profound declaration he ever made, a statement, recorded even in the edited texts, was not a metaphor, but a literal and explosive statement of his cosmic origin and purpose? Are you prepared to hear those words as they were truly meant to be understood? We have followed a trail of whispers through the corridors of time, a path illuminated by the faint glow of a truth that refused to be extinguished. We have traveled from the sun-drenched plains where a patriarch knelt before a king of light, to the cloud-veiled sanctuaries of Ethiopia where that king's memory was kept alive like a sacred flame. We have felt the schism in history, the moment the world's spiritual memory was split in two, and we have understood that this division was not an accident, but a design. Now, we arrive at the heart of the mountain, at the center of the mystery, where the final key to this hidden knowledge is waiting. It is a key you have held in your hands before, a phrase you have likely heard 100 times, but you were taught to see it as a locked door, when it was always meant to be a grand and open gate. The turning point, the moment of no return, is not found in a lost gospel or a hidden scroll. It is embedded, like a diamond in common stone, within the approved Canaan itself, in the Epistle to the Hebrews. There, the author, attempting to articulate the supreme and eternal nature of Christ's authority, makes a declaration that shatters the very foundations of the system built in his name. He proclaims that Christ is a priest forever, not of a new order created in a moment of time, but according to the order of Melchizedek. Listen to those words again, not as poetry, but as a precise spiritual frequency. This was not a comparison. It was not a metaphor for a new kind of power. It was a direct statement of lineage, a confession of cosmic identity. Christ was not starting a new priesthood. He was the perfect and complete embodiment of the one eternal priesthood that had always existed, the very same one that blessed Abraham in the desert dawn. This single revelation changes everything. The entire architecture of a religion, built on succession, on a power passed from one man to the next, from Christ to his apostles and down through the ages, is revealed to be a human construct, layered over a much deeper, more ancient truth. If Christ's authority comes from an eternal order that predates all earthly institutions, then no institution can claim to be its sole proprietor. The keys to the kingdom were never forged in Rome. They were forged in the heart of the cosmos itself, and Christ's mission was not to give them to a select few, but to show all of humanity how to find those keys within themselves. The system of control built its walls around the idea of a new covenant that replaced the old. But this revelation dissolves the walls entirely, revealing that there was only ever one covenant, the inherent connection between the created and the Creator, a bond embodied by the eternal priest-king. What if the great suppression was not merely the hiding of a historical fact, but the deliberate severing of humanity from its own divine blueprint? The guardians in the Ethiopian highlands understood this. In their sacred texts and oral traditions, Melchizedek was the archetype, the perfect pattern of divine consciousness in union with the world. Christ was the ultimate fulfillment of that pattern, a living, breathing manifestation of this cosmic law. His miracles, his teachings, his very presence were not the introduction of something new to the world, but the reawakening of something that had been forgotten. See, he did not come to start a religion. He came to restart a memory, the ancestral memory of our own divine potential. The bread and wine he shared were not the beginning of a new ritual, but the continuation of the timeless transmission of life and wisdom that Melchizedek himself had offered to Abraham. This understanding transforms the spiritual journey from a path of obedience to a path of remembrance. The order of Melchizedek is not an organization you can join. It is a state of consciousness you can attain. It is the sacred alchemy within your own soul, the perfect balancing of your inner priest and your inner king. The priest is the part of you that is eternally connected to the source, the silent, intuitive knowing that requires no external validation. The king is the part of you that takes this sacred knowledge and wields it with authority in the material world, shaping your reality from a place of enlightened sovereignty. For 2,000 years, we have been taught to fragment ourselves, to give our priestly power to an institution and our kingly power to a state. We became a kingdom of subjects, forgetting we were born to be sovereigns. This is the deeper consequence of the great forgetting. The loss of Melchizedek's truth was the loss of our own wholeness. The system of control could only thrive by convincing us that we were incomplete, that we needed an external power to connect us to God and an external authority to govern our lives. But Christ, as the embodiment of the Melchizedek principle, demonstrated that the ultimate power is the union of the two within a single being. He was the perfect channel for divine wisdom and the perfect master of his own reality. This was the true threat he posed, not to a Roman governor, but to the entire philosophy of separation upon which all empires are built. A race of integrated priest-kings cannot be ruled. They cannot be controlled. They can only co-create. The evidence of this truth now rearranges itself before our eyes. The quiet anomalies of Scripture, the suppressed Gnostic Gospels speaking of an inner divinity, the persistent mystical traditions that survived on the fringes of orthodoxy, they are no longer contradictions. They are echoes of this one central revelation. They are the surviving threads of a magnificent tapestry that was intentionally torn apart. We are now beginning to see the full picture, to understand that the story we were told was not a lie, but a shadow, a simplified and controlled version of a truth so vast and liberating it was deemed too dangerous for us to know. The system did not hide a man, it hid a mirror that, when looked upon with open eyes, reflects back our own divine face. We stand now in the light of this recovered knowledge, and the landscape of our spiritual world is forever altered. The foundation has shifted from a historical event to a timeless reality. Christ is no longer a figure confined to the past, but the living expression of an eternal order, an order that is as present and accessible today as it was in the deserts of Canaan. But this revelation, as profound as it is, opens the door to an even deeper mystery. If Christ's purpose was to awaken this priest-king consciousness within humanity, what was the mechanism? What was the true nature of the power that he wielded? A power that could heal the sick, command the elements, and conquer death itself. Was it merely faith, or was it a form of sacred technology, a forgotten science of the soul that the order of Melchizedek had guarded for eons? And so, the final veil falls. The ghost in the machine of history, the silent king who blessed the father of nations, is revealed not as a footnote, but as the author of the original text. The great mystery that has echoed through the ages finds its resolution not in a new discovery, but in a profound act of remembrance. The mission of the Christ was not to begin a new religion, but to restore the memory of an eternal one. He was not the first priest, but the perfect and final expression of the only priesthood that has ever truly mattered, the timeless, cosmic order of Melchizedek. This revelation does not tear down the temple, it dissolves the walls, showing us that the sacred ground upon which it was built extends in all directions, encompassing all of creation and flowing directly into the center. of your own heart. This is not a truth to be studied, but to be embodied. It is a living key designed to unlock a chamber within your own soul that you may have been taught did not exist. For this hidden knowledge, this forgotten legacy, was never truly about a man who lived 2,000 years ago. It has always been about you. The silencing of Melchizedek was the silencing of your own inner authority. The great system of control built its empire on the foundation of your perceived incompletion, convincing you that you were a fallen creature in need of an external bridge to the divine. But the truth preserved in the high mountains whispers a different story. It speaks of an unbroken lineage of light, an ancestral memory of wholeness that is your most sacred birthright. Within you, at the very core of your being, resides this same sacred pattern, the perfect union of the priest and the king. The priest within is the silent witness, the intuitive knower, the part of you that is eternally connected to the source and needs no book or creed to validate its wisdom. The king within is the sovereign creator, the master of your own domain, the power to take the silent knowledge of the priest and manifest it in the world with purpose and authority. For centuries, we have been taught to live as a house divided, to give our priestly connection away to institutions and our kingly power away to worldly rulers. The awakening to the order of Melchizedek is the sacred act of calling them both home, of reuniting them upon the throne of your own heart. To embrace this truth is to begin a profound transformation. You cease to be a seeker of external temples because you realize you are the temple. You stop searching for an intermediary to speak to God on your behalf because you begin to hear the divine voice in the stillness of your own consciousness. This is the essence of true spiritual awakening. A shift from being a follower in a story written by others to becoming the conscious author of your own sacred journey. The world no longer appears as a place of exile, but as the kingdom you are here to co-create and sanctify with your presence. This is the lost truth that was deemed too dangerous, for a world of integrated priest-kings can no longer be controlled by fear or governed by illusion. We have followed this thread of light together, from the dust of ancient Canaan to the living memory of Ethiopia, and now it has led us back to the only place where the revelation can truly be completed, within you. The journey outward into history was only ever meant to catalyze the journey inward into the soul. The purpose of this ancient wisdom is not to replace one set of beliefs with another, but to ignite the direct living experience of your own divinity. It is a call to end the long exile from yourself and to reclaim the crown of your own spiritual sovereignty. The journey of remembrance has only just begun. This revelation is not an endpoint, but a gateway to even deeper layers of understanding. Now that the memory of this eternal order has been reawakened within you, what truth is your own inner priest finally giving you permission to know, and what will your inner king now build with that sacred knowledge? Share your reflections in the space below, for your voice is a vital part of this collective awakening. If this message has resonated with the silent knowing part of your soul, subscribe and join this circle of guardians. Share this revelation with another who is searching for the keys to their own kingdom. The great forgetting is ending, and we together are the memory keepers of the dawn to come.